Heads it is. Gator, you won the toss. Will you receive or defer?
I will receive.
All right.
Go right on offense.
All right, here we go.
Let's go, Paul.
All right, so call your shot, guys. Who wins at Columbus this weekend, Ohio State or Penn State?
Listen, getting healthy matters. Getting Ibuka back, getting Travion Henderson back, it matters. Home field advantage matters. They're playing at the Shoe. What's at stake matters. Staying undefeated, staying on top of the Big Ten East. But ultimately, Doug, it's about who's better. That's really what matters. Penn State's better. Penn State wins.
I was thinking of this today, and I didn't go back and check it, but you tell me, is this the first time that Penn State goes into this game with the advantage at quarterback?
I'm not sure they do go into the game with the advantage.
I really like Drew Aller.
I like Aller too, but
he's that big, strong guy who can deliver the football, and I think he might be the best Penn State quarterback we have seen in the Franklin era.
He might end up being that.
He hasn't thrown an interception yet.
Oh, there it is.
I like their big tackle. I think James Franklin rides Drew Aller to a win in Columbus Saturday. That's my early read.
So we both have it.
We both got Penn State.
There are 9 unbeaten teams in the top 25 right now, aside from Ohio State or Penn State, because they play each other, so one will have to lose. Which will be unbeaten the longest?
Okay, so this goes back to a preseason prediction that I had, and that was... Is the question which
no,
the question
will be the next unbeaten to lose?
Next unbeaten to lose. Okay. I'm going with Oklahoma losing next week to Kansas.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, QB1 there, Jalen Daniels, has been hurt. He's had a back injury. They've got a great backup. Jason Bean's got a ton of experience, and he threw for over 400 yards last week against Oklahoma State.
They're well coached.
I'm gonna continue to ride it out. I'm gonna say Kansas beats Oklahoma, which might have some residual effects on people's opinions here locally. But I'll say Oklahoma's the next unbeaten to lose.
Interesting. I mean, there's a couple of reasonably tough games. That was one to consider. You got Florida State and Duke this weekend. It's also on Saturday night that could be interesting if Duke's able to take down Florida State. But I think both of those teams end up winning their respective games. I look at the game coming up November 11th in Happy Valley. It's two times in a row. I'm going with Penn State. I think Michigan's going to be the first team, or the next team, I should say, that loses, because I think Florida State will handle Duke.
Well, I know how you feel about James Franklin, and you're continuing to ride that.
God, I can't stand James Franklin, and I've got them beating Ohio State this weekend and then beating Michigan at home. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. I don't like this at all.
So, barring quarterbacks, who is the best player in the country?
Well, this is even more interesting, I think, because of the injury to Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers gets hurt, and I think a lot of people thought that perhaps he would be that punch-button answer. He's gone for maybe the rest of the season, at least until perhaps the championship games start coming around. I have a few players in mind, but the one who stands out I can't get away from is Travis Hunter. He's back. He's playing the stud athlete from Colorado. He's a fantastic corner and a phenomenal athlete who plays wide receiver as well, and they just feed him the ball. He plays both ways, and it's not like he plays a little bit on offense and all the time on defense. This guy is always on the field. He is a phenomenal player.
We're halfway through the season. This guy is 400 yards clear of his closest competitor. Halfway through the season. Torrey Taylor, the punter at Iowa, has outpunted the closest competitor by nearly 400 yards, averaging 448.
Come on. Just stop. Just stop. You're not serious.
No, I'm not.
Okay, it's a great answer. I think it's funny. Okay.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers is probably the best player I've seen, but he's hurt. Seriously, there's a player at Iowa. Cooper DeJean is pretty freaking awesome, the cornerback. And then I'm going to go with 2 wide receivers, though, and I'll narrow it down to one.
Thank you.
One is Keon Coleman.
Yeah, that was one of my guys. I wonder if you get the other one, too.
Luther Burden at Missouri is ridiculous. This was one of those recruits that Missouri managed to get with their NIL deal. He is ridiculously good. So if I can't say Bowers, and you won't let me say Torrey Taylor,
I'm not going to say that.
Luther Burden, wide receiver, Missouri.
You know, the other receiver I was thinking of, can you guess my other receiver? Because Keon Coleman was definitely on my
Marvin
list.
Harrison Jr.?
Was not.
Okay.
Roma Dunze from
he's pretty good.
from Washington, who's got 6 touchdowns, averaging nearly 19 yards a catch, has 736 yards receiving already.
No Torrey Taylor.
Who is?
So Iowa is 6-1 and perhaps the most boring team in the country.
Yeah.
Will they finish 11-1 only to get blown out in the Big Ten championship game?
No. They will not finish 11-1.
Oh, who's the stumbling block?
I don't know. But
I mean,
don't
look at the rest
trust
of the
Iowa.
schedule.
I'll tell you, I'll give you 3 teams that can be tough to play. Minnesota, Illinois, and Nebraska.
Okay, and where are they playing those games?
They are playing Minnesota, Illinois are in Iowa City.
Yep.
Nebraska is in Lincoln. But
On the last game of the season.
the thing is, Iowa, because of their offense, every game is going to be close to the sun. Every game is going to be a close game because they're not going to blow you out.
But with that punter?
It's tough to overcome that punter. So I'm going to say they win the West, but I don't, and they will get blown out in the Big Ten title game. I just don't think they'll go there 11-1.
Well, I think the biggest test might just be this weekend against Minnesota, but they're playing at home. Their defense is legit. Their punting game is legit. And like we joke about the punting, but the punting is a big part, right? Because if you're going to be pinning guys back as much as you can, then your defense takes over. You got a long field to defend, and that's harder on other teams. The other thing might be that Iowa punts probably more than any other team in the country.
Certainly do. That's why
opportunities.
That's why it's even more of a joke what I said.
But I do think they go 11-1, and of course they get blown out by the Big Ten East champion because it's just there's no competition.
Will the Pac-12 be represented in the CFP?
They will not be represented. I just think there's too much cannibalism that happens out west between the Huskies, the Ducks, the Beavers, the Cougars, and the Trojans. Not to mention one of the bottom feeder teams in the Pac-12 always seems to wreak havoc on one of the other teams. Like you think you got it going, and then all of a sudden what happens? Arizona comes up with a big win. Or Arizona State will beat you. It just happens every single year. And I don't think it takes away from the great story that is the Pac-12 this season because they have a number of really good teams, but no one's going to go unscathed.
Okay, I agree with you. And I the weird thing is the team that has the easiest schedule the rest of the way has already suffered, not a bad loss, but a loss. The easiest schedule is Oregon State. They only have to play 2 of the big boys, and they won't play them until the last 2 weeks of the season. They're going to be 9-1 going into games with Oregon and Washington.
But who'd they lose to?
They lost to Washington State, which isn't a bad team.
Not a bad team.
But they've already chalked up a loss. And so
And didn't Washington State just lose a horrible game?
Yes. Oregon State, they play Washington at home, and then they have to travel to Oregon. And I would give Oregon State the best.
Finish.
It is a brutal finish, but everybody's got brutal finishes. Like it's the best conference in college football, and they might get left out, and something seems wrong about that. But I guess
that's why
this will get corrected, and there's going to be more teams in the playoff next year.
Well, not from the Pac-12.
So with the implosion of the Pac-12, what should happen to the Rose Bowl?
Well, look, it's sad. The Big Ten, I hope, maintains its tie-in. So I want the best matchup. If a Big Ten team or the Big Ten runner-up doesn't go to the playoff, right, they still go to the Rose Bowl as it stands right now. So what's the best matchup? I think the Rose Bowl should call up Notre Dame and say, if you get to 10 wins, we'll take you every year. Because, if you're getting a Big Ten team against Notre Dame, then guaranteed every year. And if they don't get to 10 wins, I would call up the Southeast Conference. Because you got to remember, Big 12 champ, ACC champ, and SEC champ. If they don't go to the playoffs, they have bowl tie-ins. So you're not likely to grab one of those teams. So I'd call up the Southeast Conference and say, if Notre Dame doesn't get to 10, we'll take the loser of your title game in the Rose Bowl to play a Big Ten representative.
I think it's interesting the way you've kind of laid it out, but because they're going to 12 teams in the college football playoff, it has really diluted the waters of what college football is, and particularly of trying to find a way to let's get the Big Ten team that's not represented in the college football playoff, which might be Big Ten Team 3 or 4
Right.
for that matter. So I just say this. It should always be a venue for a major bowl game. It should host a college football playoff game every single year. It's one of the semifinal games every year, and that's it. I can't. As much as your idea about
my
Notre
idea
Dame,
is dumb. My idea is dumb
it's
because
not
a
dumb.
10-win
It's
Notre,
not dumb.
But is a
It's-
10-win Notre Dame team not going to the playoff?
of course they are.
So a 9-win Notre Dame team, if you get to 9 wins and don't make the playoffs?
But we're doing it just to hang on to what history, and at this point, it's bastardized history. So don't do it.
Yeah, maybe just make it a constant
clean cut,
semifinal.
and it's always a semifinal game.
Probably
And
makes more
It
sense.
can also be a final game on some years in a rotation because it's the best venue.
It should be.
It's the best venue in college
It
football.
should be. Yeah, my idea is dumb, but I'm trying to hang on to something and guarantee a Big Ten tie-in. Because if you ever made that trip,
I like the
if you ever made the
creativity,
trip,
but
the trip is beautiful. But you're right; it would have to be a 9-win Notre Dame team in the SEC 3 or 4. So there it is. Why not? No, it's the NIL transfer portal live animal mascot thingy here on Karsch and Anderson 97.1.